Woo, all right, folks. Oh man. All right, we are ready to get this show on the road. Fela and Asceric, or TravWest, whatever you want to call him, they are ready to set up the Seek and ready to get going with this. Whew, I'm out of breath. I should not have run here. Getting ready with this tournament match in the USTA Beginner Tournament of 2021. And this is, again, Fela and TravWest, or Asceric, whatever we're going to call him. We're going to call him Asceric, since that's his playtech name. And so this is Fela's third match of the tournament. And I'm not sure how many TravWest has played. That is not something that I am aware of. I should probably look that up. Whew. But TravWest is an interesting participant in this tournament because he has been around for a while. I believe he has been in the TAC community for, I'm gonna say almost 3 years. I think since 2018, at least the beginning of 2018. I think he's been in the community. So he is, however, still qualified to play in the beginner tournament because of it's not how long you've been playing, but how what your skill level is. And so since he falls within that skill level range, he is permitted to play here. So we see right off the bat, we see adjacent corners being played. Asceric in white, Fela in black. We see the mirrored opening right off the beginning. Asceric playing that traditional opening of getting the mirror and then going straight down the line. Fela also responding in the same way. Now, I will note that Fela did finally watch one of the commentaries I did on her second game, the one against Christopher. And so she did see that comment about the openings there. So it'll be interesting to see how this progresses, what the deviation will be, and how that is responded to. So let's see. So this is Asceric's fourth game of the tournament. We do see the defensive move here from Black, which is important to note that Black does have to make that first defensive move because White is the aggressor, does have that initial momentum that Black has to overcome. Placing down here for White, continuing on that threat and also going for that horizontal threat as well. Strong moves. And it looks as if TravWest has won all three of his previous matchups in this tournament. So strong showing from TravWest in this tournament so far. Definitely the competitor, I think, the top competitor in this group of the beginner tournament. And again, the group is comprised of 6 players. Fela coming out here playing this defensive move. Interesting playing here as opposed to here, because this is now attack threat. Probably expecting to make this capture over here onto C2 from B2, which would cut that threat off. Surprised by that a little bit. We may see capture and then a recapture here and then a capstone drop, but instead we see a flat get placed here by Fela. This is also effective in cutting that off, but it will require a capture move now. So at this point in the game, Black must make a capture in order to stop this road threat, because we see here it is connected. Okay, so we do see B2 come over to C2, make that capture move. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see White make a capture here onto D1, or even playing the longer game, going for a capture onto C2. But instead makes that connection here at the top for the tack threat, forcing black to make the capture instead. Good play, forcing the captures. We'll probably see a D1 up to D2, as that is the most forceful of the capture moves at this point. And I imagine any sort of capture war that occurs will result in a capstone being placed by one or both players. It is interesting. We are at move 9 here, and we have not seen a capstone yet. It is typical to see capstones played a little bit earlier than this, but it is also not too far-fetched to have a capstone played around turn 9, turn 10, turn 15 even. We do see the capture come down here from D6 down to D5. Now, this wasn't the optimal move because this can easily be countered just by placing again here at E4. The optimal move probably would have been moving up from D1 to D2, as that cuts it off. Cannot be immediately resecured in a attack threat, as it would require more than one move to cement that threat yet again. So we will likely see D1 come up or C2 come over onto that D2 spot. D2 is the spot to capture. Although capturing D2 with C2 would give a little bit more reliability, and white would probably drop a capstone right there onto C2 because it already has some pieces there. So interesting choice, and we did see immediately after this capture, the capstone dropped. Great capstone position. If you see here, you notice that white has 3 opportunities to capture, 2 of which are already stacks with a friendly piece underneath. Excellent capstone positioning, really great spot. No matter what black does here, white is going to capture a stack in an offensive way and a defensive way with a friendly captive underneath, which makes that stack all the more powerful with a capstone on top. Really great move here from Trav. Definitely shows that he is he knows what he's doing a little bit more than maybe the other beginners in this tournament. We do see black's capstone come out. It is important to note that there is no current tack threat, although I would not be surprised to see white come over here and capture onto D3, which would somewhat isolate the capstone of black. Black would then be basically forced to capture up onto E4, because this would then be a tack threat, capturing over, and so black getting the capstone into the game would be pretty important. White does make that capture move. We do see the tack threat here coming down all the way from F6 down to D1, making that capture over. Now, instead of moving the capstone up and blocking that threat, black could also maybe capture down with C2. I don't like that move as much, as it, again, creates more liability on this stack, but also gives white the opportunity to make sure that this capstone stays out of the game. So it was a good move of black to move that capstone up onto E4, as that keeps that black capstone part of the game, part of the action. Now, in response, we'll see what white does here. There are a number of different moves. I could see white renewing any sort of threat, maybe not on this next turn, but I could see maybe playing up here at D6. Instead goes around here for C3. This does sort of advance the threat just a little bit, but also has the opportunity to go for a horizontal line now. And this does basically secure, yes, he will win this capture war on this piece. He can secure that, get a double stack here, and basically have this as a guaranteed anchor point, connecting right here to this capstone, which is really solid. And then he can maybe work on playing A6 up in the next D6, sorry, in the next turn. So what black needs to be looking at here is looking at how this works, how this vertical threat is working for white, and how black can make a move that works against white and at the same time helps progress his own position, or her own position in this case. So one of those things that I would say is placing here at f4. I really like that move for a couple reasons. Number one, it's connecting at an anchor point to an edge, which is really important. It also kind of gives this opportunity to connect over here to a6, which can be done by moving c4 over to d4, which makes that connection here, and then you can come across. Now, what this does also is f4 can move up to f5 and maybe cut that off. Also, if white decides to go over here on the horizontal towards f3, f4 can come down to f3. So I feel like f4 is a really strong move here. But it might not be super intuitive to look at for one of these newer players. So I would not expect for Fela to see that at this point. But also it may not be the best move. Again, while I am experienced, I am not one of the top 3 players in this game. So I could be missing something here. Again, I also just did a stream and commentary on the Chandrian 7x7 match with Abyss and Fwib, who are in the top 3 players of this game, and my mind is a little melted from that high quality top tier gameplay. So we're taking a look here at Fela still taking their time on this move. Got 9 minutes to go. Asceric just barely below 15 minutes on the clock. So we do see black make that move at f4. Great spotting. Took their time and really located that move. I like that. I like that play. It was good for me. So we'll see what white does here next. I really want... Okay, white does make this, which isn't attack threat yet, but it is a sort of the next move towards attack threat. So coming down here from d6 down to d5, or I guess even coming across from e5 to d5, which I don't really like as much, but those are solid threats. One thing to combat that, I think, would be to... Really honestly, there's nothing that black can do here to stop that from happening. So I'd say continue to build, maybe here at b5 or even at b6. Instead going up. Okay, interesting. Don't know about that as much. I think that either move here, I think that now he'd probably want to move e5 over. But I really liked playing the offensive move. And the reason I like playing the offensive move for black, playing over here at b5 or b6, probably b6, the reason I like that is specifically because of white would make a threat by capturing something over here on d5. Well, black can cut that off just by moving the capstone over. And there's nothing that this capstone can do about it. What then white would be required to do would be to play down below here. So here is where the threat begins. Now, white has made this tack threat. It cannot be stopped by a capture here, cannot be stopped by a capture here, cannot be stopped by a capture here. It needs to be captured here, or by moving the capstone to capture here. The capstone can come over here onto d4, or this flat here can come over to d6, or this stack of flats onto d5 can come up to d6. Actually, no, this flat can't come up to d6. This has to come over to d6, because if this comes up to d6, then he just places a flat here, and that's the game, connected up there. So coming across with e6 over to d6 would be the move, and it looks like when black placed the move, the flat here at e6, that was the intent. Okay, so we do see the capstone come over, which is, in my opinion, the stronger of those two moves. I would not be surprised to see white place a flat here. Placing a flat here would continue the threat. No, instead places a flat there. Very interesting play. I don't agree with that. I think placing on e4 would have been way stronger for white. Um, hmm, confused by that. Black can then place here at e4 because this is attack threat. Something has to happen here at e4. Um, so placing at e4 would be an aggressive move, and it would cut off this threat. Unless I'm missing something. I don't believe I am. Hmm. Yeah, so placing here at e4 would probably be the best move for black, as it would continue that aggressive line up here to a6, while at the same time cutting off this vertical threat from white. Now you do see this pattern a lot, not this exact pattern, but the pattern of black going for a road horizontally while white going for a road vertically, or vice versa. As long as one is going one way, the other is going the other way, because this allows them both to sort of cut each other off and both be offensive and defensive at the same time. Okay, so we do see black fill in here at e4, makes that move, cuts off that threat. White playing around it. Okay, I think I see what white is going for here. White is not making a threat at this point, but is hoping to make a threat on the next turn. Black can make the first threat by placing here at b5 or b6. I think I like b5 better than b6, but they're basically the same. So what happens after that move would be a capture from white, probably capturing up here onto f4. And a capture onto f4, this might be a Tinue pattern here. This might be a Tinue pattern. No, it isn't. Black can come down with e4, capture onto e3. White would then be forced to use this capstone stack to come on over. And then black can move the capstone down to cover back up onto d3 and stop that threat. So while it is not Tinue, it is a very dangerous position for black. And I wonder if black will be able to see it. Does not see it. White will take the win if white sees it. White does see it, takes the win with that capture move. Now white, let's go back a move. Let's take a look at this. White had a couple options here. White could have moved e5 down to e4, or could have moved, like they did, f4 over to e4. So that is the end of game one. Asceric takes game one here in this beginner tournament match against Fela with a road win. Still a solid game, even though the threat was missed. Still a good game. So we will probably take a quick break, or the players will probably take a quick break while they rattle their thoughts around in their brain a little bit and get prepped for the next game. So we will maybe take a little look at some of the turns through this game that were pretty influential. Let's take a look back while we wait for the next game to start. So let's see. Okay. So we see this mirrored move, the mirrored opening here being played right in the center, just as the top tier games are played. Now this is where I think the deviation should have occurred for black. So black should have played a capstone on this turn. So after white continues this, black should place a capstone either here at d2 or here at c5. Now the reason I say this is because a capstone when it captures, which inevitably it will have to capture, will not create as much liability as another flat stone piece. So I will take another quick look at this in just a moment after I discuss dinner plans with Fela. All right, and back. So, for those of you not in the know, Fela is my wife, and she came in here to talk about dinner plans in between her games. And she did, as she just said to me, maybe you should mention that I just came back from a 7-mile bike ride with a 4-year-old, and my brain is mush. So that is her caveat that she has thrown out there for those of you watching. Um, but they will begin just momentarily, and then we can start on our next game and take a look at this. But let's go back to this analysis for just 1 second before we hop in. A capstone capturing over would not create as much liability as a flat stone. So a capstone down here, still sort of central, and so is that one. Anyway, back to the live game. This is game 2. This time Fela as white and Asceric as black. They are all set to go. We see the first stone placed here in the corner, and then adjacent corners. Will we see another mirror opening, which is so common in 6s? And we may see here pretty soon that sort of change. Ooh, we do see Asceric coming out with the quick deviation. Playing off here to sort of cut off white's play. I would not be surprised to see white play here at c4 to basically continue this threat, but instead continues that. Doesn't make as much sense to me. Black might want to play here at e2 or here at c2. Plays at c2 to keep that from being a capstone position, since that would be really tempting for me to place a capstone there. I would not be surprised to see e2 played here for white, or e3. E3 would probably be just as good, followed up by maybe an f2. Instead, Fela just continuing on with this vertical threat, even though it's already been cut off. Not really the best of strategies in this case. Did notice her mistake after black starts going this direction. Realizes, okay, I need to cut that off and still make a connection to this vertical threat that I was making before. Black drops a capstone, which solidifies his positioning, because now he can connect here, he can capture over, he can interrupt this threat. It's not a bad position at all. Now he's placing above here at f4. So f4 can now come down, capture at f3. And he can keep that there, basically, and continue on his threats here. What white wants to play is white wants to play over here at e4 or at f5 to do something about that. Probably at e4 right now, so it can immediately come over and capture. Because otherwise, we'll be looking at a Tinue threat very quickly. Because black will want to play here at b2. Now, playing at b2, if white doesn't place in one of these two spots, will basically secure his victory. Again, if white doesn't play in one of these two spots. Because we'll see a number of different options of connecting this capstone, which is in a great position, to a wall over here on f3, or to one of the edges of the board here on f3. All right, what are we looking at here? What can we see? Fela is taking their time to make a move. I don't know if I agree with that move here. This may be the game for black in this position. No, I don't think it is. It's very close, but it isn't. Because if, for example, white comes up, captures here, black... No, so white would have to capture down here first, maybe, and then black plays, then white captures black. Yeah, I don't know. It might be game. It might be a Tinue pattern at this point. And so that is tough. So it's not a tack threat. I will point that out. It is not yet a tack threat, but it is one move away from a tack threat, and often Tineway threats can pop up when you are one move away from a tack threat. So White's got to think about this here. Okay, a capstone. I like that. Okay, I forgot that White even had a capstone. I think that'll work. I think the capstone being played will work, and it will stop it. So Black is probably going to place down here at B1 or at A2. White's capstone comes down to B2. Yeah, I think this will work for White. I think this works to stop it. Black making the connection. Okay, so White does need to come down here at B2, probably with that capstone, in order to stop this threat. Now what I would like to see is I would like to see this capstone come down here at B2. And if Black doesn't place here at B3, I would like to see D1 be placed for sort of a sneaky threat to throw this capstone across and make that connection. Not super sneaky, but it is a beginner tournament, and any sort of throwing move tends to be pretty effective in these beginner tournaments. So we do see B2 come down. This is where I would expect B3 to be played from Black. Yeah, and that continues the threat. And so what White can do in this case is come over here onto C2 with that White capstone and the stack and the flat below it, and that cuts off that threat and doesn't necessarily make a threat of its own. It can also throw the capstone over here onto D2, and that would be attack threat while at the same time cutting off the threat. But I'm not sure how strong of a move that actually is. I do like it though, because it's fun. I like being able to throw these. Okay, that is not what I expected. It does work. It does stop that attack threat. But it is definitely not what I expected here. Ooh. So Black can renew the threat by capturing up with D2 onto D3. But if White manages, okay, so that is attack threat connecting here onto A3. And so if D2 comes up to D3, that is attack. One thing that White can do that probably makes a lot of sense right now is to move D2 over to C or D3 over to C3. Now the reason I say D3 to C3 is for two reasons. Number one, it sort of keeps this Black capstone away from the action of White. Also starts creating this sort of connection for vertical threat for White. Also, White would win the stack capture war here by capturing up afterwards. Black renews the threat just by replacing there, so that move didn't really do anything for White. Was sort of a wasted move in that regard. But yeah, I still say that moving this D3 over to C3 would be really solid, as it would be defensive and offensive at the same time, which is always what we want to have out of a move in tack. Again, Black does have that tack threat here. Moving D2 to D3 does complete a road. We are. Again, we'll look at the time comparison. So Asceric has played basically on the increment the entire time. He's still at basically 15 minutes, which is the starting time. And these tournament matches have 15 minutes with a 10-second increment. So he's taken about, on average, 10 seconds per turn. Fela, on the other hand, has taken quite a bit more than that, as Fela is down to 10 minutes on the time. And I could probably come up with the actual, let's see, so somewhere around, I don't know, 6.5 minutes or something like that per for the 12 turns, and so divide that by 12 and you'll get it. I'm here to commentate TAC, not do math. I will talk TAC all day long. Okay, so Fela, still trying to figure out the best way to get out of this trap here, to evade this road. Now, one thing I expect, like again, I do say D3 to C3 would be such a solid move. Makes the capture up instead. We're gonna see this black fill in over here into F2 and then maybe F1 capture up again based on the pattern that I'm seeing. Again, that was sort of a wasted move. It basically delays things, but it doesn't actually make any changes. Unlike the D3 to C3 move, that would change the sort of game position, make it so it would take more than one move to renew that threat for black, but also be offensive in a way for white to do some damage and be offensive. So F1 does come up as we expected. Now, because of these 3 moves occurred, black has to take 2 moves in order to renew their threat. So, black then going for a vertical threat here, which he can complete in 2 turns. White, now this is a tricky one, playing here at C1 or at B1 is attack threat, and it is sneaky because it requires this F2 to throw the flat over onto this D2 spot. So playing here at C1 might look like a defensive move to black, but in reality it would be a attack threat and offensive at the same time. So that I feel like is the best move, especially in a beginner tournament, because it can be easily overlooked, one of these thrown flat stacks. I feel like that would be the best move here for Fela to go for, placing here at C1. Because it could be one of those things where black says, great, I can make my threat here by placing an E5. Instead plays at E1. While that is defensive and that it can capture onto D1, it does not create the tack threat that we were seeing with C1. And Fela probably just did not see the move at C1. Again, just the same way why it would be a good move for white to play is probably the same reason white didn't play it, because it's sneaky and it's harder to see. And again, this is a beginner tournament, so they haven't played thousands of games to be able to see these as easy as other folks who have played thousands of games. And as we've seen also, you can miss moves like that even when you are a seasoned veteran like Abyss or Fwib or those top players like that. Okay, so we do see the tack threat renewed from D1 all the way up here to F5, or sorry, E5. So this is a tack threat. Placing here at E6 would be a road. So what white can do here is take this E1 and capture D1, which would be a tack threat, and cut off the road. It would not, however, be as sneaky of a tack threat as the other one would be when the capability was there to place at C1. Instead, white going to place a flat to block off black. So now we have this 2-pronged threat. Now this is a problem because black can make a road going up here, placing at F6, or by capturing at D3 with D2. So there are 2 separate ways that this can work in the advantage of of black. And so if, for example, white wants to capture here at D2 with C2, does that, then black can capture here at D2 and threaten that direction. And it would require a throw of the capstone over here in order to stop that, because this flat couldn't come down and capture after that point. So Fela may not see the way out of this. There is another way out of it, but it kind of messes up white's offensive plans by capturing over here onto E4 maybe. But again, it does mess up those offensive plans because it would require a recapture war using this D4 piece. So yeah, probably capturing here onto D2 with C2 is the move. So it does make an offensive threat. That is attack threat from white, capturing over here onto D1 with E1, or capturing over here onto E2 with F2. That is also attack threat. Now, recapturing this stack, which is very tempting for black to do, because it's got two black flats underneath it, will result in probably this capstone being thrown over and capturing onto D2, because that is the only way for this to be recaptured without losing, basically. Or I guess throwing this over first and then throwing the capstone over. So the capstone does need to be thrown over onto D2. Okay, so that does stop that horizontal threat, but black can now make a vertical threat by capturing over, probably over here all the way, spreading the stack, leaving a black out, or going up. I like this better. I like going over to F2 with this stack. While this can do a lot of damage up there, being able to recover these prisoners is really strong also. So instead, black decides to make that tack threat already happen. White is going to have to... Yeah, white's going to have to capture probably at F6. And then when that's replaced at E6, going to have to capture it with D6 to make that happen. I feel like that's the only way out of this for white, is to make those captures up at that top row. Goes for the one below it, which also works, I think. It may require a wall in a moment. And this is a thing you see a lot of times in beginner tournaments, where basically all of the action is happening on part of the board while this whole 3x3 section is empty. And this area of the board down here is pretty empty also. All of the action is happening basically right here, which is sort of this linear way of doing things, and it's pretty common in these beginner tournaments. Okay, so moving these stacks up, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Pausing the video real quick just to give a little heads up. I found this out after the game, but Asceric did tell me that his move right there on that turn was a misclick. So that's why maybe it didn't make a lot of sense to me at this point, but I didn't know that until after the game had finished and after the video had recorded. So keep that in mind. That changes a little bit of my analysis at this point. And now back to the video. I don't really see what he's trying to do here. It doesn't give him... I mean, it captures this, but it doesn't give him a road or anything. Throwing this capstone on top of this stack is now perfectly viable again. It's basically handing that stack to white. So I don't know the reasoning behind that move for black. There is no tack threat that black is making at this point. So again, throwing that capstone over, while it would have to leave at least one black flat behind here onto C3, it would ultimately gain this stack. Yep, there we go. Okay, so we do see that happen. Now, what black does not want to happen is black does not want white to be placing here at d5, because then that is attack threat for white. Suddenly, with this capture of this stack, white is now in a much better position than black. While black was way ahead just moments ago, white now has control of this game. That's how powerful stacks are, especially stacks with a capstone on top. Really good play. Okay, now how will black defend is the question. Will he drop a wall here preemptively saying, okay, I know that this is going to be bad for me, so I'm going to drop a wall right here? Or will he just start playing flat some more? Maybe hope for that flat game and hope for building more roads? He's going for the flats. So he's building this vertical thread again. White placing here would work really well because the only solution that black would have at that point of after black places here at d5 is to capture over here onto d4 with e4. That's the only play that black would have in order to stop the win. So forcing moves is pretty huge in TAC, especially because you know what your opponent is about to do and you can plan for it. And if they don't do what you know they're about to do because it's a forced move, then you win. So that's great. So placing here at d5 is the ideal move. Whether or not Fela sees that is the question. We know that, ooh, Fela does play it. Excellent. So we know that Fela has a tendency to play a lot of, from previous games we know this, to play a lot of very defensive moves. Now, the fact that Fela is playing an offensive move here is great. Means the player development, learning, and that sort of thing. So playing here definitely has that tack threat. Can come down, spread this stack down to d1. So we do see that forced move. Now here is where I'd be interested to see what the play is, because the answering move to this isn't clear, because moving this stack allows this capstone to come in and interrupt the threat, right? So this is a tack threat now. Tack threat down here all the way to f1. Moving from here e6 all the way to f1. Great move, because it's offensive and defensive at the same time. I like it a lot. If somehow black makes a move that does not stop this, so like if black, for example, places a wall here, that can be the game and that can be a win for white, because white can then capture e4 over to d4, and that is Tinue, and that is the game. So if black doesn't see that and places a wall here, for example, to stop this threat, he will lose the game if Fela sees it again. So we'll see what black's response is going to be to this. He does have a lot more time on his clock. He's got 11 minutes versus Fela's 3:46. So Fela has been taking a lot more time on these, and it's starting to show. Definitely a lot of thought going into this. Black did make that blunder a little while ago that really kind of threw the game for him. Okay, so that was a good move. So this... I like capturing f4 with e4. I think that's what I want to see. I want to see that happen. I think that would be good for Fela. Ooh, that doesn't work because then this stack can come over and capture onto d4. So Fela was getting sort of ahead of herself, didn't see that that was an option to do that. But hold on, this is such a big stack. Capturing it with the capstone might be worth it to give up this line to the capstone. We shall see. It's very tempting to do. Okay, I like this. I like capturing down with d5 onto d4. The reason for it is, let's say d5 captures down to d4. A wall gets placed here. This stack gets spread to the right. So then it connects this down here and this over here. The capstone is basically forced to come up. Yeah. Okay, that doesn't do it. Fella's really focused on trying to get this line to work where capturing this happens and is able to make this threat. Not really going to work, I don't think, now that that option is gone. Again, the move a couple moves ago. Let's go back. Right here, after he captures, the move probably would have been to capture f4 with e4. Because then any response can be used to throw that over, place a white, drop a white, and that's a Tinue. If not, throwing the stack up would be really solid as well. Okay, so let's go here. We see white place the flat here. Black has this double stack here, decides to throw them up and interrupt things. So this is attack threat for black. Very easy to miss for white. Black does see it. Really well done. I am kind of surprised by that because that's a very easy attack threat to miss since it goes from all the way over here, all the way around, and then up. Since it goes around this capstone, very, very easy to miss. So we do see that. If now here's a fun one. Now this is why it's fun. So if white gets any opportunity to place here at f1, basically where white is not trying to defend against a road threat, to place at f1, here's why that's good. Placing at f1, capturing the stack. Can go that way or can go that way, and either way it's a road. So a two-pronged threat. But right now, white has to respond to this vertical threat, which is here at b6. Because placing here at b6 does create a road all the way from d1 to b6. So white can choose to play another flat here, can choose to capture this stack. A lot of options at this point. Places at b6 instead. Good play. I like that play because I feel like in the next couple turns, this stack is going to have to capture that one. Yeah, so now we see this horizontal threat and vertical threat at the same time. This is the linchpin. Capture this big stack, and you've got a lot of room to play with this. I can see capturing the stack and then immediately playing at a6 or playing at capturing the stack and then spreading it across over to f4 because that would be vertical and horizontal. It'd be great. But instead white comes down and captures, and this big stack gets moved and is no longer capturable by the capstone. Sort of a missed opportunity there for white. Definitely a missed opportunity. So moving the whole stack up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, moving the whole stack up would not create a attack threat because that's the carry limit. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's the carry limit. So moving a full stack up wouldn't be attack threat there. Comes down. Okay, I like that. I like coming down because it forces a recapture here, which puts. Oh no, he wins. I didn't even see that. Yep, he can move that straight up. So that was a good play from black to be able to do that because he can win in those two different directions. Yeah, so it was a two-pronged threat. Good for black. Great play from white also. Great play. That was a really good game for a beginner tournament. And just a good game all around. It was fun to see those multiple moves. Let's look back, do a quick little analysis on some of these moves as they played out. So we see here, this is where black really had this dominant position of making these multiple threats, this vertical threat and the horizontal threat. When white played here, I liked the play. Playing there was fine. Um, it was the good move, I think. And then capturing over, this is where I really wanted to see the capstone get thrown. But instead, we see the capstone come up, and this is where the blunder begins for black. So black is playing, does that threat, that's fine. And then white makes this move, which is also fine. It was a good move, good to disrupt things. But then when black moves this stack up here, it was a huge blunder on his part because it allows this stack to be captured by this capstone, which immediately throws the whole game on its head because black is so in the lead right now. And then immediately after this move, boom, white has control of the whole game. And so right here we see black going for this again a little bit of a misplay, and then white playing here was the great move. And we'll go back and see, we see this get played, and then we see the fill in here, which I normally wouldn't have advised, but it worked. Because now we see the fill in and we see that vertical threat. And I feel like that was probably the best move in that situation. Sure, the capstone can come up, but I still like the move. So we see this come down, and this is where I see the mistake from white. Where white needed to do is move e4 over here to d4, and that capture, or not move e4 to d4, e4 over to f4. Sorry, e4 to d4 is what they did. e4 to f4, that capture would have sort of moved towards this as a vertical threat, but also allowed for a throw capture for a spread, basically. A spread here and then here to make that basically a tinue. And so that would have been really, really nice to get that. But instead goes for this move, not saying that this could spread across. And so that spread across is what happened. And that's where things started to go a little bit sideways, but white had the opportunity then to capture this stack a number of times and did not do it. And that was also another little blunder from white. So we see here this vertical threat going across, and then white keeps building. Now we see this horizontal threat. This is where I wanted white to capture this big stack. Could even just take the top 3 and capture the big stack there, because then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6. So be able to move 1 and then 2 to make that. While leaving still a white behind. So I feel like that's sort of like a big turning point in the game also. So we saw, okay, so this is turn 26. So big turning point in the game was right here at turn 20, huge for white, and then 26 when white, 27 rather, when white makes this move. That was sort of the clincher for black. Yep, that is, because I feel like that might even be tinue. Yeah, that is tinue. Yeah, so that is the tinue move, and so that was just because of that. So there we are. That is the game. That is the end of this match from the beginner tournament, the USTA Beginner Tournament of 2021. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for sticking around. Be sure to check out the Discord channel and the Discord server rather, and the subreddit, which is r/tech, and all the other stuff. Bunch of things out there, and there are links in the Twitch and the YouTube and all that stuff. So go check those out and learn about the game. And until then, happy